So that's what I'm going to be talking about. It's a bit of a challenging abstract. I decided that in thinking of something to talk about here, it didn't need to be about the technology. There's going to be enough talk about technology. And I know that might be difficult for some people in the room because we're all technology focused. But we do tend to concentrate on technology. I think the technology is secondary. And I figure that we should come here to this conference and we pat ourselves on the back and we announce some new clever initiatives, inventions. We've surrounded ourselves in the meantime in NDAs so that they come to these events as secrets and they're launched. We work with partnerships and we have the feeling that we're what people are moving to, and the other side, the analog people, the people that are already in these industries, already giving benefit. People are going to move away from them automatically, but I think the problem is that we're not actually earning a return on our investment, our R&D. We're all spending a lot of money on investing in this. And can we really say that we're actually getting a return? I figured there was something that was missing. So what I'm going to go through is a little survey. It's a survey that was carried out recently amongst Inkjet participants. So we'll go through there. Some interesting things in there. We'll look at changing consumers, that's changing as a verb, or is it that the consumers are actually changing themselves? But changing consumption is the thing that drives into our hands. So we should be making more progress and getting faster adoption of the things that we're offering if we offer them effectively. Because the consumers are changing to the way that they need the things that Inkjet can offer. But we take a look at the life cycle and how we introduce things. We're right now either in the chasm or trying to cross a chasm to get into mainstream. So looking at some of the characteristics of what will drive us across that chasm and how we do things, whether we do things in the best way. Then I'm going to finish with an example of Ricoh's approach to the décor market. So the first part of the survey, it's growth. We're all talking about growth, and we do invest as if we're in this very high growth field, and we should be, but our growth expectations are pretty modest. We're between 5 and 10%. That's what everybody thinks. We're about 5 to 10%. 5 to 10% growth is not spectacular considering how much we spend and the size of our revenues collectively. And that 5 to 10% that's Inkjet people saying that. So they're the fans of Inkjet. They're not the other people. So we're not in a spectacularly high growing environment. We should be, but we're not. The next frontiers for growth, well, the colours don't match on that table, but I think there'll be no surprises there. The two questions are slightly different. It's what do we see as growing, and what are we interested in taking part in? There's a list. There's quite a lot there, so there's no particular focus. And whereas in the past there's been sort of industries where everybody rushes towards it like a gold rush, it's much more scattered. And there are some things in there that have some challenges, not necessarily easy to overcome. What's standing in the way of progress? That's an interesting question, because if you see there, the top answer is technical barriers. Now, there are 129 respondents, and you see the tick count there is 320, so that means that everybody put a tick on technical barriers. So we all think that technical barriers are impeding progress. That's not necessarily the case, and I'm taking there that it's not just the technical barriers, it's the confidence. It's because customers are not confident in the technology. When we look at whether the immediate thing is commercial or technical, most people agree that it's commercial, which is difficult to square with the previous answers. I think we've all sort of approached it as if Inkjet is going to replace what's there before. And I think that this is interesting because it shows that most people are actually thinking that it's going to be additional to, not a replacement of, what exists already. And I think that's healthy, because the traditional means of printing actually have some benefits. They have great benefits. They do a good job, but we can do some things that they can't, which is additional. The next few questions are about whether we're getting our message across. Education is a big part of it, and I think that we pretty well everybody agreed. However, if we move through to our messaging, more than half think that we're not giving clear messages, and we're giving conflict between us. So one party might say it's ready, another party might say it's not ready. Some people might say that the image quality is good here, other people might say it's not, and it can be better, and it's not that. So we all talk about different things, and we all conflict with each other. So there's no uniformity. We don't tell a good story, and we're not effective in convincing people. This is just from the survey results. And that's what we ourselves think, because these are inkjet respondents. We don't make our story easy to tell, and the answer is pretty well no. People don't agree that. It's fantastic machines, and they're based on what the technology can do. That's fantastic, that's great, but does it actually answer a need? So we'll come back to this later, but first things first. There's an article there I was referred to for the jamesclear.com. It's about first principle thinking and Elon Musk and his approach to launching a rocket to Mars. It's quite interesting because he actually saw the need, and then he went backwards to how it could be achieved, rather than thinking what could be done and then finding a use for it. And this comes into left and right brain thinking. The left brain is generally associated with order, logic, control, accuracy, familiar or proven facts, and basing everything on facts. It's more scientific. The right brain is creative, free, original. It's sensual. It's got taste in there, things that can't be explained by language, for example. So if we move through to some left brain predictions, these eminent scientists, one believed that aeroplanes wouldn't be possible, and the other believed that electricity was a fad. But then we turn to some right brain predictions of the future, and these came from creative people who were thinking what could be cool in life, not how it could be done. They thought about video chatting, video conferencing. They thought about tablets where you get information graphically displayed on a handheld device. They thought about 3D printers and what could be created with them. Universal translators, maybe not for alien languages, but if you're British, then everything is an alien language. Virtual reality, hands-free phones. So the right brain has been more successful in predicting the future than the scientific left brain. Consumers are changing. It used to be, with Maslow's hierarchy, it was all that we'd spend on the luxuries and the creative elements. We'd spend a little bit because most of our needs had to be catered for with the bulk of our income. So we were looking at the practical things, the rational things. We were rational buyers. We actually bought what we needed. And then it's becoming much more experiential. People they're looking for a feeling and an experience from what they buy. It's actually inexplicable reasons to buy. So just putting somebody's name on a bottle of Coke, it massively increased the sales, but it's the same product. So that's where packaging, we all focus on packaging, but packaging is an interesting one because it does give people that experience. So that's the way that consumers are changing, and that's what I say, inkjet should be growing faster. We should be expecting inkjet to grow faster, because the way that people buy the things that we help to produce, or we can help to produce, it's playing right into our hands. We can offer variety, we can offer choice, we can offer those things that people haven't been used to demanding in the past. I like to think of this as a sort of a journey from North Korea and uniformity and boring through to Portland, Oregon, or Colorado, the individual hipster. The consumers of the future, they don't want uniformity. They don't want to be accepting what's given. They don't want light oak furniture, wall to wall. They don't want what's gone before. They want something that represents them, and they want it now. Of course, they want it to be sustainable, ethical. They want everything. but they don't all want the same thing. That's perfect for inkjet. That's an opportunity. It's also a threat to our potential customers, the adopters of inkjet. It's a threat. It's a big problem because those guys have been used to producing in large quantities but without variety. That's what their systems are set up for, systems of manufacture and systems of supply chain. So that's really what we have to disrupt. And what we offer has to be applied in the right place to create that, that choice that goes through to the consumers. We all know those advantages. I won't go into them. I think that some of them are perfect for today's environment. Some of them are actually, they're examples of where we've misapplied it. And that's where I'd like to move on to. Oh, there's some funny PowerPoint things going on here. There. This hype cycle is, I mean, I've seen this referred to in 3D printing, for example. The expectation, there's a little trigger, something happens, something's possible. Could be in a James Bond film or a Star Trek film. And then everybody raises expectation, and they get expectation way beyond what can be delivered. And then they get disillusioned. They find the limitations. They find it's not quite what they thought. And so there's a trough of disillusionment. And then it's up to that technology to build back that confidence and to prove that it can do something useful. And then you get into the productivity phase. And that's a pretty standard cycle for technologies. And I'd say it's pretty true for inkjet. Now what we have here is in the early phases you get the innovators, the visionaries, they're matched together. So somebody invents something and you get somebody who's looking for something that's new. They adopt it, they actually find the limitations, and then you get the gap before the mainstream market. It's called the bowling alley. That bowling alley is where the technology actually starts to knock over some of the skittles. And you knock one skittle into another, and then you start to get a roll on. And in inkjet, we've got some of those, but I'm not sure if they're actually being effectively used. It was always that label was the poor relation. Inkjet label was always really challenging. It never delivered the figures. But now we see that label printers are selling very, very well, inkjet label printers from the main manufacturers. This has nothing to do with Ricoh, but there are some very successful label printers, inkjet label printers, and the biggest share of new printers bought are inkjet. That's the front pin. Ceramic was also a pin at the front. Using those to knock into some of the others and learning from those experiences, we can overcome some of these growing pains. It is a credible option for a single pass industrial printing system that can print thousands of meters without stopping, has maximum uptime, very little downtime, if at all, unplanned downtime, and it can pay back. So to cross the chasm, we really need to do things more collaborative, with more collaboration. We need more openness, fewer NDAs. We'll come into some of that later. We need to appeal to economic buyers. We actually need to appeal left brain to people who are taking decisions, and they're not really interested in how big our nozzles are, or how big our drops are, or how many nozzles we've got. They're not really interested in that. What they're interested in is whether it can actually do the job for them and make them money. And it sounds like I'm a bean counter or some kind of somebody who's only focused on money, but I do think that the problem we have is that unless we deliver a return, the investment in this industry will start to dry up. So we have to actually appeal to these buyers on their terms. We have to prove that we can make money and stop talking about our tech. First principle thinking is we have to find a problem, an industry problem. We look for the problem to solve rather than thinking about our technology and what we can do with it. If we find a problem, then we look at how we best apply that technology, and I'm not going to go through word for word on this. We think about how we can best apply this to create the best effect, economic effect, and the best economic benefit. And if we can do that, then adoption becomes easy, because all we have to do is prove that our technology can do that job. What customers are interested in is can it do what they need it to do? And at the bottom line there, it's risk. It's all about risk. If they don't see risk and they see it can make them money, then they will buy. But whilst we're all talking different stories about what's coming next, and this is going to be faster, and we're going to have more dots, and we're going to have them, well, whilst we're all talking about the tech stuff, then we're actually losing sight of, we're actually making it feel like it's a moving train, and nobody's going to jump on a moving train. These are ideas. There are cases where it's necessary to talk about the tech. And I'm not saying it's not, but I think it's a question of priority. Customers want to know that it's good, it's going to be around for a time, and it will do a reliable job for a reliable period of time. So we've got some great advances in our technology. Print heads, we were talking this morning about print heads. I'm not going to talk about the technology. I'm not, it would be going against what I'm actually saying when my message is different. There are some fantastic advances, and you see from Memjet, you'll see from the other guys, Fuji, and we've all got great things going on. We're all pouring money into this, and we're all coming up with some great products. But even the old ones are fantastic. And we'll only get the future stuff if we actually start paying with the stuff we've got now. So we really need to make some useful devices applied to problem solving in industry, and we need to do it now. If we continuously wait or work on the extra 10% of performance that costs the 90% of the total budget without delivering something, I think maybe we're actually missing a trick. We could ease back on the tech, make something that's dependable, useful, and get it into the market to solve problems. That's our process, and we all know it. It's a sort of adversarial process. We study, we research, we compare, we look at this print head versus that print head, we look at the risk factors, we look at whether it's new, whether it's coming up, whether it's actually half-baked, whether it's going to be what it says it's going to be, whether it does what it says on the tin. We look at, there were some questions on the last presentation about the life expectancy of the print head that filters into the TCO calculation. So we're doing all these computations, then we're looking at the system components, the recirculation systems, the ink supply, the ink itself, then we're looking at the drive, data path software. We're looking at all of these things, the stitchability, the mechanics that are around it. It's very long-winded. We have to test every option. And then there's all this make or buy decisions. And somebody who's actually designing a fairly simple printer and trying to develop a recirculation system for the ink from first principles, that's just like reinventing the wheel, and it's a waste of time. So I think that what we're available to everybody, and then we should concentrate our efforts on the application of that technology rather than trying to do it slightly differently with a differentiation. So what we're trying to do, we'd like to be the go-to company. This is just blurb, corporate blurb, but we'd like to be the go-to company for this. We've got the scale and size to be able to do it, and we'd like to reduce the time and risk to market, because that helps us, helps our investment, it helps all of us if we can do that. We don't have to do everything ourselves, but what makes sense for us to do, we should do, to make it easier so that we can get ideas to market. We've got this scale of things. We've got print head factories. We can supply print heads. We can supply print bars. We can supply bits with components of those systems, even cleaning stations, automated cleaning stations. We can do software. We can do all as components in a mix and match Meccano kind of way, or we can supply sub-assemblies, pretty much like the automotive model, or we can supply the whole thing. It does need scale and power to get these things into the market and to get them there without risk and with the credibility so that customers don't feel it's a risk to buy them. Ricoh, we're worth suing, along with some of the other guys. We're worth suing, so it's actually a safer bet for some of these industries to actually buy from the likes of Ricoh or Fuji or whoever. Those are our aims. We're trying to stimulate invention, innovation, and we're trying to get it to market. So here's one example. I think many in the room may know about this. It's working with an analog incumbent, somebody who's an expert in the industry, wallpaper manufacturer, Olbrich. They wanted a print engine to put digital into existing lines in the field or into new lines. So Ricoh took the job of building the engine that fits onto their own system. That's a first example. That's installed in a beta site, it's producing wallpaper, it's available on show, and we're now planning second, third, and so on. A new partnership here between Hymmen and Ricoh, a similar type of thing but slightly different. As I said, we do what we do when it makes sense to do it. Hymmen have great experience in the wood decor industry, furnishing and flooring products, melamine pressing. They've produced some of the process equipment in that industry, and they have good connections with that industry. They also have inkjet credibility because they've actually produced 41 single pass systems installed, repeat buying. They've got credibility, but in the UV way. We've got some water-based, a little bit of water-based experience. We've got the products, so we're building together with our software as well to go to that market. Now, currently there are options for digital print in the decor market. You can buy digital print from one of the existing vendors. It's a centralized kind of field, and we'll come on to that. You can have a multi-pass printer. That's fine, but you can't, it doesn't hit the scale. These are intense production lines. You're looking at a production line of 20 million square meters. A single pass printer is not going, a multi-pass printer is not going to do it. Or you can take one of the existing offerings, which are designed to be almost they're digital gravure printers. But those printers are not satisfactory for this market. We've got multi-pass here, and this is a scale of investment on the vertical axis, and on the horizontal axis it's throughput capacity. We've got the single pass here, and then we've got the zone where operators need to be there. And the aim of this is to deliver a digital advantage where people can do smaller quantities of design with no inventory. So you have to operate in the plant. This is the current workflow. You've got printers delivering printed paper in tons, 10 tons, truckloads to pressing companies, board producers. They actually take that, and then they have to plan their production and their inventory. Wastage is incredible. The opportunities for inkjet here are obvious. That's the problem zone. If you deliver vanilla paper to the plant and then you print in a balanced way what you need, you can print today and press tomorrow. No inventory, no wastage, no obsolescence, variety for consumers, all of those things, the digital advantage delivered by the board producer. But it changes the supply chain, and it takes out all of those constraints and costs and time delays. So that's where we plan to be. We wanted to be in the 5 to 20 million square meters per year zone, which required a printer, like that. So that's what we together came up with. We tested, of course, very thoroughly. We tested whether the concept actually fitted the market. And it's not, on a trump card specification, it's not sexy. But it's just what the problem needs. And if you do it slower, you can put less stress on materials. You're putting water onto very thin, open paper. You put less stress on the materials. You make drying less of an issue. You can do it more reliably. It's a stable process. It delivers a reliable solution. So we're not chasing to be a Formula One dream. We're delivering a Mercedes C-Class, because that's what the problem needs. This also, it does disrupt the supply chain, because it would mean that the paper vendors are no longer centralized and supplying radially to a number of their customers, but they're actually, this should be in the plant where the pressing goes on. So it could be operated as a service by those existing vendors in the sites of their existing customers, or Ricoh can do that. That's what we do on copying. We have service globally, so we can provide service locally global instead of the hub and spoke kind of system of sending engineers from expensive markets like Germany or Japan. We can have engineers on the ground wherever these are installed. So appealing to this too is the bottom line. And that's how much it costs between each of the alternative systems. Buying from an existing supplier compared to high volume inkjet of 2 different sorts and the Saturn on the right. This is a published paper. This will be a published paper in its long form. So if anybody would be interested to see the reasoning, as an example of the methodology to convince economic buyers that inkjet is viable, then please ask, because it's free. Happy to supply it. But this is what I thought. If we talk about the tech first, and then we build from the tech and see what we can do with it, then you end up with mismatch. If you actually think about the problem, and then you design using the tech as a tool to solve the problem, and then you prove it works economically, then it should increase the rate of adoption. So in summary, first principle thinking. I think it's find a problem and solve it. Make sure that the digital advantage is applied where it gives best effect. Don't be constrained by what went before. Don't copy the form of what went before. Look at the function. So designing an inkjet version of a gravure printer is not sensible. Work with analog because it has advantages. There's no place in this for fundamentalism, technology fundamentalism. We're not enemies. We're all trying to do the same thing, and they do some things better than we do, and we do some things better than they do. We've got to get our story straight to be convincing. We have to prove economic benefit. And we need to, I'm suggesting that we need to maybe do things a bit differently to improve the processes by which we deliver our solutions. Okay. Thank you for listening.